in Chicago with another hangout here with my good buddy Barrett, discussing A Course in Miracles. How are you this morning, Barrett?
I am doing pretty good. How are you doing, my friend?
Really good. It's been such a mild autumn here in the Midwest. Generally, by this time of year, we've had 4 or 5 plunges with the temperature, and it's been very moderate, and perhaps lulling us into a state of nonchalance, and then we'll get slammed in January or something. But I am enjoying this reprieve from the normal bitter winds and frighteningly cold conditions that Chicago manifests every year.
Yeah, it's true. All of us insane people who live in the northern climes, we definitely enjoy these summers and maybe mild autumns, but the winter does come, and then oftentimes a lot of us are shaking our heads saying, "Why do I live up here?" But yeah, I think we're going to get through it, and I think this idea that Jesus said, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of fear, I shall fear. I don't know, I'm stumbling over it right now, but this idea kind of reminds me of the winter, that we're going to get through it, and we don't really have anything to worry about, even if it seems like we do.
Yes, and that was actually David in
Oh.
his 23rd Psalm. He was talking about the valley of the shadow of death, and that's what we're always being confronted with. We had these hideous events in the last week in Paris, and of course this is pushing everybody back into a state of fearfulness and apprehension and concern about death. And really, I think that's when the Course offers us the most optimal reassurances that life is certainly not conditioned by our physical being, that we're going to get rid of this body one way or another, either being blown up in a bomb or a raid or a car wreck, or going down with pneumonia or cancer. I mean, there's an infinite number of ways that the ego has generated these horrible visions, spiritual visions of our being terminal, our being, vulnerable to all of the different aspects that the material world presents to us. And yet, once we start getting into that deeper level of the Course, we start to recognize that who we are is inviolate and will always be around.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think that these particularly brutal or horrific events that we do see from time to time, obviously showing up with the attacks in Paris, they really point to that deeper truth, and that deeper truth is that we are love, we are peace, we are one, and that actually can't be shaken by these things. It can't be shaken by a war, it can't be shaken by an attack, can't be shaken by a cold, can't be shaken by a minor irritation. No matter what it is that's showing up in our world, they can always point us back to that deeper truth. And that doesn't mean that we're not sensitive to the needs of others, that we can't be kind to people who are suffering and going through challenging times. But what it means is that we're less invested in the story, we're less invested in the drama. It's interesting, like usually the first time we watch a movie, we're really into the story. But you can imagine someone who's really close to the story, like a director who's seen the film over and over and over again, maybe during the editing process. The story doesn't really have that effect on them as much as it would for us. They have a bit of a remove, and after a bit, we start to see that we've seen this story so many times. We've seen all the ups, we've seen all the downs, that we start to have a little bit of that sense of remove, and we can watch the story unfold, but without that deep attachment and investment in what's happening to the characters. that we think we are. But in truth, we're the ones that are watching the whole thing.
Absolutely. And, one of the brilliant aspects of that is that as we shift our identity from our physical, ego-based sense of self to our spiritual truth, what actually happens is that it softens the blow for everyone around us, so that whatever we witness, we can actually step into the space of affirming that this is part of the illusion designed to trap us, and we don't have to, step into that space of going down and having our existence terminated temporarily while we reboot and come back all over again ad nauseum.
Yeah, and I think ad nauseum is the right word. After a while, all the challenges and pains and struggles that we sometimes have here in the world, we get sick of them. We don't need to really keep doing that. And that's really the good news here, is that we can use the things as they keep happening in our life and in our world. We can use them to help us kind of break the cycle, step out of this trap, as you said, that we've set for ourselves, and realize, I don't want to play this game anymore. And then all of a sudden we can experience something as awful as a terrorist attack from a perspective of open-heartedness and compassion. And it's even possible for us to see that the people who are carrying out these violent actions are really just asking for us to be kind to them. They're asking for us to show compassion to them. And they're asking for that love just like all of us are. So in that sense, we are all the same. And I think that idea of our sameness is that crucial first step before we get to that experience that we actually are all one. And that's the state of grace that we're always going for. And it may seem like a stretch sometimes to have these kinds of thoughts, but it's worth it. It's worth going for it. Because one of the things we learn as we study the Course is that the forgiveness principles it talks about need to be applied to everyone, and that we can't leave anyone out. Because if we're leaving even one person out of that thought of compassion, then ultimately we're leaving ourselves out. And, we don't really want to do that.
Oh yeah, that really is the thing of our greatest vulnerability, is to believe for even a millisecond that there is somebody else here. We are all part of this one expression, divine expression that occurred in the mind of God. And when God created the one thing that God was aware of, which was itself. And so we are that self that God projected into infinitude. So if we attack somebody else, if we have, that backsliding moment where we imagine that somebody else has done something wrong or has wronged us, then that buries itself in our own consciousness. And we take the guilt upon ourselves, as well as projecting it onto these illusionary selves around us. So it really, gets more and more intense as we continue to develop these ideas of the fact that there is only one life. We are collectively that one life. And whatever we do to anybody else, we do to ourselves. And all of the pain and shame and sorrow is going to have to be addressed through forgiveness. The slate has got to be wiped clean. And we start with, forgiving everybody that we encounter for everything that appears to be wrong or hideous, or, an attack on the world, an attack on humankind. We have to know that these are all parts of the ego's game to deceive us and to keep us in that state of, the depths of the dream.
Mm-hmm. And I think that fits actually perfectly into our Manual for Teacher section for today, which is number 12. How many teachers of God are needed to save the world? And as I mentioned to Chris, that reminds me of a Course in Miracles joke that I heard. How many teachers of God does it take to screw in a light bulb? And I think the answer that Jesus gives probably works for both. He says the answer to this question is one holy, perfect teacher whose learning is complete suffices. Which is just what you were saying, Chris. It's just that there is no one else out there. There's no real separation. This story that there are 7 billion different people here on a planet is just that. It's a story that makes us think that there is other. There is something that is not me. And ultimately, we're starting to pull the plug on that idea. And what that means is that all the borders in our mind between people, between different ideas, they start to sort of melt away, and we step into this place where there is only that grace, and we get the light bulb screwed into. So,
Yes. Well, one of the things I really love is in this the second paragraph, where he's talking about we collectively, the Son of God. It's he says, "Thus does the Son of Man, which is all of the individual selves that we imagine ourselves to be, become the Son of God, which is the one united being. It is not really a change. It is a change of mind. Nothing external alters, but everything internal now reflects only the love of God. God can no longer be feared, for the mind sees no cause for punishment. God's teachers appear to be many, for that is what is the world's need." So there's this beautiful dance that goes on throughout the Course between the idea of a separate self, the unified self, and the nature of that unified self, which is an abstract reality. And we have to get more and more willing to step out of this linear frame and this linear format for our existence, and begin to realize that some things you can sense, you can feel, you can comprehend on an intuitive level, but you can't formulate it into a concrete linear vision. So there is a lot of first trust and then a deeper level of knowing that comes out of being a student of the Course in Miracles, because you penetrate the space-time factor. You penetrate the illusion of everything being separate and distinct and apart from each other. And you begin to realize that everything that is or has ever been or will ever be is part of this vast, unlimited, and perfect spiritual state of being. And it is all-inclusive, and it is profoundly abstract in nature.
yeah, that distinction is so helpful, that truth is abstract and illusion is concrete. There's another line in the Course that speaks to this. It says, hate is specific, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Every time we feel hatred, it always has an object. We're always directing that hate at someone, at maybe some country, at some idea. Usually it's a person. But love is abstract. Love is all-encompassing. Love doesn't have any borders or boundaries, and it has no one or no thing that it excludes. And so as we begin moving down this path towards our truth, we start to move a little bit more into these abstract ideas. We start to be able to play in and to sort of hang out in these states that they're a little less defined. It's interesting because the Course itself is really like a great big work of art, and it has a lot of the characteristics of like an epic poem. There's a lot of abstract ideas. There's a lot of there's certain ways that it's not very specific. And that's because it's helping us to move towards that place where we know that specificity isn't required. I think another thing I hear sometimes when people are starting out with the course, which is understandable, is that they want definitions, for each term. And I think you can find those, but what happens over time is that the need to define begins to diminish. We don't really need to kind of box something in, because we just sort of have that experience of its expansive nature.
Exactly, and we definitely get away from the idea of thinking about things, because when we are thinking is thought as a generational process. So your thoughts become your reality, and as we move away from thinking and moving into that space of experiencing from a vantage point that is not defined by a self looking at something outside of itself, then we start to really experience the true meaning and the true depth and breadth of the Course, because it is something that moves us more and more into the realm of the indefinable, until ultimately we start to surrender these last little fragments of personal identity in order to enter into that magnificent union that restores to us our state of perfection. And that's something that, is indescribable. Arriving at that door and then being willing to step through the threshold is an experience that you can't convey in lucid terms. You merely indicate, this is the direction I went, and this was what I came back with. So that's the beauty of the way the whole process works, is that we do access this region that is indefinable, and it is cleansing and healing and purifying and rejuvenating. So then when we come back into our personal identity in this world, we experience what has been termed a miracle. But that miracle is actually merely the union with truth.
Yeah, I mean, it really is this kind of subtle but significant shift, where we feel like we're very attached to this self, this body, as our identity. And then all of a sudden we feel like we're sort of just wearing this body or this personality as a mask. And we can still keep playing out that role. We can still live the life of Barrett or Chris or whoever, but we're not so into the story. If Barrett stubs his toe, I'm not as in much suffering as maybe I used to be. And those kinds of things add up, for us to be able to move through life here and to not feel quite as much struggle, and eventually to move into less and less until we get to the place of the real world that the Course talks about, which is a place where we're totally disidentified with the ego. And all we have as an experience is love, because that's all we know ourselves to be. So as we move down that path, we can just find that sense of peace and that sense of expansiveness more and more to be our true state.
Absolutely, yes. One of the things I've been working with my own meditations over the last 4 or 5 weeks now is that whole concept of the peace of God. And I start off my my personal time in my meditative practice by affirming that I embrace and accept the peace of God. And if you close your eyes and just relax and gently contemplate that idea of how you want the peace of God, you arrive at a plateau where you slide into a very unique area where all of a sudden all of the concerns, all of the fears, all of the cares begin to vanish, and you feel this deep inner peace. And Jesus described that as the peace that passeth understanding, because again, you can't define it, but you can experience it. So I would say for all the people who are, catching our videos, this probably is the most immediately experiential thing that you can do, is to claim the peace of God and then just be quiet and allow it to flow up from that wellspring within you. And a lot of your cares and concerns will be lightened, if not actually remedied, from that one simple technique.
I like that one. And the other thing I would say is if peace is not your instant experience when you do this, that's still okay. And sometimes our mind kind of just won't seem to let go when we claim this. Keep claiming it, keep going there, because eventually that monkey mind starts to lose some of its energy, and it starts to kind of unwind and slow down. And all of a sudden, through those, seemingly mad ideas, these thoughts that keep running through, there'll be that flash. You'll have that experience of the peace. So, just keep claiming it for yourself, and that experience is inevitable because it is your truth. So, it's just a matter of time before it is also in your awareness.
Yes, exactly. And actually, we really haven't gone that deeply into this particular part of the lessons from the teacher's manual. So I'm thinking that maybe next week we'll want to come back and make this part 2 of having a discussion around this idea of, how many does it take to make all of this go away? How many of us is involved in the redemption of God's Son?
I think that's great. I mean, the answer might be 1, but it still might require 2 of these conversations for us to get through it.
Exactly. And so hopefully we will see a calming down on the planet over the coming weeks. We're entering into a season of Thanksgiving and then acknowledging the birth of Jesus. And, Diwali, I think, is over now, but a lot of celebrations are coming up that are acknowledging that the light is restored, is returning, is coming back full swing. And so as we move into the season of light, perhaps those who are tagged into the course will start to find a deeper level of personal illumination.
I like the sound of that. Well, let the light in, right?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. And then also to remind people, Chris and I will be having an in-person event coming up Thanksgiving weekend. That's Sunday after Thanksgiving. And that's going to be at 1 p.m., right?
Correct, yes, 1 to 3. And we have wiggle room if we go over the 3 p.m. mark. And it will be Thanksgiving leftover feast for all of you who are still hungry. You can come down and join us for some leftovers.
That's right. We'll feed the belly and we'll feed the soul all together.
Absolutely. And that's happening down in Alsip, Illinois, which is on the south side at Transformation, TRANZFORMATION, which is a metaphysical bookstore and a gathering place for people who are seeking a higher way of life.
All right. Well, we'll all get high together.
Yes. And we won't need to smoke or imbibe anything.
All right. I look forward to it, Chris. And you have a great rest of your day and enjoy the sunshine we have in our unseasonably warm fall here.
Yes, absolutely. And you as well, Barrett. You're on the north side, so you may get more of the snow than we get down on the south side. But the snow is on the way, and we can celebrate the true season of winter.
There we go. I like that season too.
Absolutely. Well, I'll see you in 1 week.
All right. Bye, Chris.
Goodbye.